Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for How to Automate Project-Based Performance Reviews, presented by CRG-M Perform. If you have any questions during the webcast, click Q&A in your webinar controls and type them there. A new tab will open in your browser with the webcast survey. Please make sure to complete it as soon as the webcast has ended. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to our presenter, John Smith.
Thanks very much, Hester. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. For this webinar on how to automate project-based performance reviews, it is going to involve a live demo, just as the title suggests. Just a little bit about me before we get started. I have worked in this space with CRG-M Perform for the last 15 years. Been involved in lots of performance management implementations. We've met lots of organizations who have project-related performance review needs. And, we're really bringing that to the story today. And you're going to see some of this in action and how we go about automating this process. So just in terms of agenda, we're going to talk through the challenges and benefits of project-based performance reviews. And I'm sure that all of you attending today are familiar probably with the challenges side of that equation, because it is challenging to automate such a process. We're also going to spend some time on a live demonstration. We're going to show you some sample project review forms, questions that can be asked, how to involve more people in the process, show you some tools for making them easier, faster, and certainly more valuable. And of course, the big one, incorporating project reviews into your overall employee performance management strategy. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and get started. So let's start with this. Why project-based reviews in the first place? And we're going to look at the reasons why we should invest in this process from really two perspectives to understand how to get our heads around this. So the first says we got to look at it from a project management discipline perspective. So formal project management, what does that tell us? And then secondly, we're going to talk about how modern employee performance management practices integrate project reviews. So we'll start with, project-based reviews. And this was an interesting quote. When we were preparing for this webinar, we came across some interesting information. I like this one. According to PMI research, wasted money and resources can be prevented with effective project management, as 57% of unsuccessful projects fail due to communication breakdown. So it leads us right into how do we effectively manage a project? And we're not really going to go through project management today, but I want to focus a little bit here on the important closing step. So we got a sample up here, and different project management methodologies have different phases, but if you go look at them, they're all very similar in that there's usually an initiation and planning phase followed by an execution phase. Sometimes there's a training phase in there, then there's a control and closing phase. And it's this closing phase where we want to spend a little time, because the closing step is what's extremely important. And the closing step is the one that has the immediate tie-in to project reviews. Now, in different businesses, we might refer to a close step differently, and we might refer to it as a review step. In our business, at the close step, as software implementers, we do something called post-implementation reviews, or PIRs. So, it just indicates there's something done at the end of the project to really understand what we learned from the project. And, one of the things about projects and project-oriented businesses and organizations is that there's a tremendous amount of learning that takes place within these projects. There are great opportunities to observe performance and also observe areas for development. And the idea about this is that when we get to the end of the project, we should step back and we should look at what we learned in this project. We should celebrate our successes, but we should also look about, hey, what could we have done better individually, as a team, as an organization? And so if we think about this from an individual perspective, it leads right into project reviews. And in fact, in some of these steps, you'll see it spelled out, like we've got it bolded at the bottom of this one. In the close step, provide team member feedback, evaluate the team members, how they performed, whether they met their goals, along with timeliness and quality of work. Conduct post-implementation reviews, a final analysis of the project, and understand lessons learned for similar projects in the future. Here's the thing, as organizations in these phases, it's too easy to get to the end of the project. And if you're successful, the temptation is great. Let's just move on to the next one. So the discipline tells us that we need to stop very quickly at the end of the project and do a review and really take stock of what we've learned. And again, depending on your organization, you might do this as a team, you might do it individually. What we want to focus on today is how we bring individual project team member reviews into this step or into this process. So when we look out at it, we see, okay, you know what, provide team member performance feedback. Well, here's an example we found where it spells out exactly the format that you can do this, and includes reviewing feedback from team members. Feedback mechanisms include appraisal forms and exit interviews. So they actually are foundational in a way, and what a great place to really bring it in. Again, focusing in on that close step. Of course, there's other things that happen in the close step that relate to project and overall project management, but let's zoom right in there on appraisal forms. So when do we do this? Well, timing's critical, and it's clear that the best opportunity to understand the project and understand the contributions and the lesson learned is to do it immediately after the project completes. You know, we've got people that say within a few days of the project ending, within a few weeks of the project ending, but the time is important. It can't be 6 months from now. We'll go back and look at team member contributions, and we'll go back and look at, you know, how the project was successful or what lessons we learned. We want to get this last step right at the end of it, and really as that project closes, that's the ideal time to do it. So let's remember that that's important. So our first takeaway when we look at this one side of the equation, when we look over at the project management discipline, what it says to us is that, you know, the project close step is critical for project success and for learning. Team performance and feedback are important measurements that come out of the projects. Timing is critical. We've got to do it before team members move on to the next project. And, you know, I think the big thing, again, learnings will influence the success of future projects. So here's the question then, if we have significant projects taking place and we institute these project team member reviews as part of our close process, how's this going to overlay into our employee performance review process? And that's a tricky question. If we think about how things, you know, sort of used to be, or how many organizations approach it today, it's almost like there's two silos. On one side, we've got, you know, our project management process taking place, and there's feedback happening, and it's sitting there in a silo. And then on the other side of the equation, we've got our annual employee review process where, you know, we're measuring competencies and goals, and, you know, giving feedback to the employee and looking at their opportunities for growth, and, you know, rewarding their performance. And somehow these two worlds they're just not tying together nicely. They're sitting in, again, in two different silos. So the state we want to be in looks something like this, where we have projects happening, and projects are, you know, being measured, and contributions from employees are being measured, and it's tying into our picture of that employee's overall performance. It's giving them feedback, and it's giving us as managers feedback on how the employee can improve. And of course, if we give that feedback in a timely mechanism, the hope, of course, is that our projects in an organization will be more successful, and our employees will be more successful within those projects. So we have some challenges. If we want to get to that ideal state, you probably know some of these. So the challenges we're going to think about with project-based performance management start with this one, the frequency of projects. It's an administration nightmare to keep up with manual project-based assessments. And, you know, this is a key challenge, and it's just screaming for some automation in here. Another challenge we have is that traditional top-down reporting structures don't work for project reviews. You know, we need project reviews to be initiated, controlled, and assessed by the project manager, not the employee's, you know, default reporting manager, you know, that they report to on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, existing project-based organizations have, you know, a matrix structure where an employee could be working with all sorts of different project managers during the course of a year. And whether you're professional services or any other type of project-based organization, this would be true. Another challenge is that multiple stakeholders need to weigh in on performance. You know, project managers, as we mentioned, certainly a key contributor to, you know, the assessment of performance in a project. But you know what else? We've got other project team members who clearly have very good feedback on how the team worked together or how an individual worked together. So here it's extremely important that we think about broadening the perspective of, one voice into more voices. Another challenge is the frequency of reviews and feedback basically will increase significantly if we're going to accommodate a more agile review structure. As we can imagine, we might have someone involved in 12 or 15 projects during the course of the year. So the frequency of review really comes in here. And again, this sort of, lays out a requirement for automation when we think about this. So our second takeaway is that really we can integrate the project reviews into our employee performance management process if we think of the following best practices. One, we need to allow staff to launch project reviews anytime that makes sense. In other words here, this is an important learning. For the project-based reviews, we don't want staff feeling like they need to go to HR to launch project reviews. Project reviews should be something the staff, the project manager, can launch on their own without HR involvement. The second piece is that we want to set and track project goals, expectations, milestones to ensure everybody's aligned. And that's really a good project management practice. And again, good, strong project management methodology would ensure that takes place. Another best practice is to document feedback, the moments in the project where we learned. And sometimes those learning moments are extremely positive. And as somebody who's been involved on project teams and has managed project teams for the last 15 years, I can tell you it's also a painful part sometimes. Sometimes our learning happens in a lot of pain. It's when things go wrong. Hopefully, most of the time we learn when things go right, but I have a feeling here there's lots of learning that takes place around this. And then the next piece is giving employees timely and valuable feedback. So frequent check-ins, happening during the project. I think the point we want to make here is that documenting these is extremely important. I think in a lot of successful project management organizations, the communication actually does take place. When things go off the rails, if there's a scope change, if timelines move, all the things that happen in day-to-day project life that we know, the important part is the communication about it and that we keep up to date with it. If somebody's not delivering, if somebody says, hey, I'm going to deliver on this date, but they don't do it, that we have a conversation about it, but also from a learning and performance management perspective, we need to document that. And that leads into our last best practice, which is we really need to centralize all the project performance records for helpful insight and easier performance management. And this brings up a good point. If somebody on my team is doing projects with other project managers, I don't need to be involved in the assessment of those projects. But when it gets to the end of the cycle or the end of the evaluation period, I might very well want to read through the project reviews of someone who reports to me just to understand, the contributions they made, what they learned, what challenges they encountered, and what development opportunities are being cited from those project reviews. So there is a need to bring it all back together. This last step is really probably about more opening the view of the reporting manager so they can see what's happening with their employees within the project. So it all sounds good. And how do we accomplish this? Well, here's the challenge. The challenge really for a long time has been the manual nature of this. And again, we've spoken to many, many organizations over the years who are project-oriented, and I'm sure some of you are on the call today that we've spoken to before as well, and we know about the administrative burden that this is. We know it's really challenging to have it out there, and so we need a modern technology solution that can help us and that can help achieve that, and that's really where mPerform comes in. We're going to show you today one of our newest features called On-Demand Forms. And it's really helping organizations transform, their project management development in real time. So what it's going to allow us to do and what you're going to see is that you can set up project forms and ad hoc review forms that are user launched. And that's the big part of this. An employee could go in and launch a form if that's what you desire, or a project manager could go in and launch a form if that's what you desire. They're all configurable. So it's your design, it's your creative expertise that goes into it, it's your organization's words and language that show up in here. And really, this is really going to help us integrate project reviews into the overall employee performance management process. Those types of reviews, along with any other types of reviews, can all be done through the on-demand form functionality. And there's some interesting ones here. I mean, if we think about beyond project reviews, think about performance improvement plans or probationary reviews or check-in forms or peer feedback forms, you know, off-cycle compensation adjustment requests. All of these can be accommodated in on-demand forms. However, today, we're going to be looking at the top one, project-based performance reviews and how they look. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is start the live demonstration portion of this webinar. And we're going to log into mPerform and take a look. So I'll navigate here over into our mPerform application, and I'll just put this up on full screen so everybody can see it. I'm logged in right now as a manager in this organization. And just before we jump into the project reviews, I just want to give you a lay of the land in terms of mPerform. I'm sure for many of you, it's the first time seeing it. For some of you, you may have seen it before. We probably have some customers on this call that know it well. Inside mPerform, it's really designed as a really flexible employee performance management tool. And it's one that we call all-inclusive because it's got lots of different features that relate to performance management. And that's part of the reason why we're bringing the project reviews into the story. The main features, of course, in mPerform is an extremely robust and flexible performance appraisal tool. It brings in best practice journaling and continuous feedback capability through our tag application, and you can sort of see the feedback area down here on the screen. We also do compensation plans and surveys in mPerform. And the great thing about it, we've got a 9-box. The great thing about all this stuff with us is that it's all included in our solution. So all of our clients have access to this, just like all of our clients will have access to the project performance review capability that we're about to show you. Another thing I just want to point out about our application is it's really built with a modern design. So you can access the application on any browser or any device. You can open it up on the browser of your iPad if you like. All of the names inside our software are linked to a profile. So clicking on a name results in the user's profile popping up, and profiles are searchable, and it gives HR the capability to, you know, put information on this profile that somebody may want to see. In fact, the employee could update the profile as well. We could have a field on there called current or recent projects, and they could go in and update the projects that they're working on so that when someone else in the organization searches them out, they can see what projects they're currently working on. So let's start with our project reviews and what this means. So the first thing I want to point out is that this new functionality we're delivering inside mPerform allows us to launch what is basically a form library. And a form library contains different types of forms that a user can launch. So for instance, when I come in here, if I see, you know, the category at the bottom, I've got 3 project reviews that we're going to focus our attention on today. And if I just look through these, I can, you know, click on this first one just to understand what this one's about. If I click on it, here's one that project team members launch after key projects are completed. So this one is launched by an employee. Whenever they're ready, they go launch this form, which is going to kick off a project review on themselves, potentially involve other project team members, and ultimately land with their project manager for feedback. Another form that we have in here is called a project close form we created. And in this one, it's a project manager that launches it. And it gives them the opportunity to solicit feedback from those project team participants. Other project team participants will come in as 360 evaluators and provide feedback. And yet another form we've got, again launched by project managers, is something we've designed that will show you that really is designed around long-term projects. This one's designed for, say, an employee who's assigned to a project for the next 2 to 3 years. It's not, you know, 2 or 3 month projects. This is long-term. In fact, this type of form will probably become their performance review. And so what we thought we would do today is talk through each of these. Now, again, these are only samples. There's something we created, it's something we've seen from experience and talking to our clients about their needs, and they offer some different perspectives. And I thought what we could do is just show you some different viewpoints within each of these forms. Let's start with the first one. I'm a project team member. I've just completed a project. I know that inside our organization, it's required for every project team member to complete a project team review. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Now, I could launch it right from this drop down where it says launch new form. If I come to this form template, one of the great things is I can just click this launch icon over here. If I was reading that description, I can launch it from here. It all leads to the same path, which is to launch the form. And this is really simple. Here's what's great. A little wizard's going to pop up. It automatically knows I'm filling out a team member project review, and it knows that it's me who's launching it. So my name's already filled in. Now I can put a title on this so that I can remember it, and I'm going to go ahead in here and just say, you know what, this is for project ABC, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. When I click next, it asks me who the project manager was for this project. And what I'll do is I'll go in here and say, you know what, let's use Frank. Frank Abbott was the project manager for this, so I'm assigning Frank. He's actually now going to have a role in giving feedback to me about my success in this project. I'll go ahead and click the next button, and here, this is where it gets interesting. I've got the capability now, if I want to ask other project team members to come in and provide feedback on my performance. So if that's part of it, and I worked on a team with 5 or 10 other people, maybe I'll ask all of them, maybe I'll ask a few of them for their feedback to help me with my development. And what I could do immediately is just go in here and I could pick somebody. I'll pick May and say, hey, I want to assign May in here for now because she's a project team member I'd like to hear from. I click next. I get a summary of the manager, the project manager involved, as well as the assigned 360 reviewers or project team members that are going to provide feedback. And all I do is click finish and launch. And at the click of a button, everybody who's included in this project, everybody who I have brought into this review is going to be emailed, letting them know that a new project review form has kicked off and that they've got a role in it. And of course, the email will spell out what their role is. The great thing is right from this window, I could go ahead and open the project review form. However, I'll also show you that because I've just set it up and I've got a role in it, it's going to appear on my home page. And when I navigate back to my home page here, you can see right at the top, Project ABC is there. It shows the launch date, and it's got a due date that's already been assigned. And all I have to do is go in, as the status says, I've got to complete my self-assessment. So with that done, that was pretty easy. I'm going to do my part of this. I've got to provide a self-assessment on how I did in this project. I go ahead and click on the project name, and it's going to open up the project review form. Now, when we open up the project review form, there's a couple of components I want to point out here. At the top of the screen, you see a visualization of the steps in the process. And, you know, as you'd imagine with a project review, it's not an annual review. It's not going to, in this case, it's not going to have lots of steps in it. It's pretty clean. It's got a project self-assessment. It's got a project manager review. There's an option to have a meeting, and then it's completed. It's got the due dates there to tell me when these items are due as well. And on the left side of the screen over here, what I'm seeing are the different sections in this project, the different evaluation areas. And again, project forms, as you design them in here, they could be very simple one-page forms. I was working with one of our clients yesterday afternoon, actually. They're a professional services business, and their project review form consists of about 7 questions that get answered by the project team member and the 360 project team participants. And there's a couple of comments on it. So in their case, when they open up the project review form, they're going to see one section here. That's it. Now, in this project detail section, what it's asking for some information for historical purposes. We want to know what the project name was, and we'll say this was the implementation, what did we say, ABC company. And we started this project, you know, oh man, it goes back to the beginning of the year. It was sort of mid-January. I would go ahead and attach some scope, and you know, I would fill in this section on who was involved and the goals. So I would type that out. I simply go ahead and save this. And you're seeing an M-Perform. It's point, click, and type. It's really easy to use our software. You know, small features like if you're, you know, wanting to include a lot of text, you can drag and drop these comment boxes. You can copy and paste in them. You know, you've got the ability to do things like check buttons that are here. And, you know, this one's actually asking me to go ahead and just just go ahead and attach something. So I would navigate over to our attachments here, and I would attach any relevant project artifacts or documents right in here, whether that's the scope, whether that's scope change documents, whether that is, in fact, the project budget. Once we've done that, I'll say that I've attached the scope and the budget. I'll save that, and I'll simply move on to accomplishments and project moments. And a really great section in here. And I think, we could almost rename this one learnings, because that's really what we're getting to. When we get into this whole project management methodology, this learning part is just so important. So, what were the accomplishments or moments in this project that we should remember? If we look back down the road 3 years from now at this, what are the big things that are going to stand out? And, we make it really easy. Somebody can go in and they can click an add new button, and they can come in here and actually add into this form an accomplishment or moment. And I think one of the big accomplishments was the implementation of a new module of our software. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that. I'm gonna quickly correct the spelling mistake that we made there. It's great that the software, reminds me of that. And I can go in and build this comment out and give a further description. So I'll add that in there. And of course, the milestones completed, I could of course fill that out and say, well, all 5 milestones got completed that we had planned. Then what I would do is navigate to the next section on performance factors. And the performance factors here get into some of the questions that are really important. So, we can talk about things like, what were the biggest project successes or strengths you as an individual exhibited during this project? What are the development or improvement areas you'd like to work on? And what support do you need from your project manager, direct manager, or company to better improve in these areas? It also, as you can see, is going to give an area to the project manager to provide feedback here. And, when I've done this piece, it's great. I'm actually ready at this point, once I've filled this in, to just submit it to my manager. Couple of things in mPerform. If you wanted to, as a project team member filling out this form, you could go ahead and just print a copy of this project review form, and you can go ahead and save that to your local drive. So you'll get your project showing up there and all the details you filled in. And the great thing is you go ahead and save that to Excel, Word, or PDF. When you're ready, you'll submit this, and just clicking Submit Review, you can say, hey, my self-assessment is complete, and I'm ready to send this off to the project manager for review. The project manager it goes to is the project manager that this employee assigned when they launched the form. So all of this is happening. It's just out there. It's a tool. It's an automation tool. The great thing is we're capturing a historical repository of this feedback, and we're going to show you in a minute how this all comes together. So this is a great example of a project team member launching their form. All right, so let's look at a different form, a second form that, will really highlight a little bit more the other project team member experience, as well as the role of the project manager. And what we've tried to do again today, just for the purposes of today, we've designed these forms so that they're different. We just want to give you some different ideas, because mPerform's so flexible that you can really build the form any way you want. Like, it can have the areas that somebody fills in, the drop downs, the check boxes, the dates, the ratings, all of that stuff you can design. Often people ask us, with so much flexibility, do you guys ship stuff out of the box? And of course, the answer to that question is yes, for sure. We've got lots and lots of samples to help our clients get started with this stuff. So let's take a look at another form that's in here. So we'll go ahead and go over to our form library, and here what we want to look at is a project close form. So this one actually includes project team member reviews, and it's something that the project manager launches. It's got a slightly different launch experience versus the one we looked at before. So we're going to take a look at this. We'll go ahead and click Launch Form. This time it wants to know, again, what's the title of this? So I'll say I'll call this one the customer implementation. And I have to search for an employee. Who is this actually about? Who is the team member being reviewed? Because remember, in this scenario, I'm the project manager who's launching it. So I'm selecting a member of the team that I worked with to say, I want to do a review on this specific person. So in this one, I'm going to do it on May Abrego, and I'm going to click Next. Now, when I click Next, it allows me to go in and add the project team members in here. And just so you can see what that experience looks like if you're nominated as a project team member to provide feedback, normally I wouldn't do this. I'm just going to go ahead and actually nominate myself and just put myself in that block so I can show you what that person's going to see. So I'll put myself in there, and then we click next. Now this is an interesting option as well, and some that come up from time to time. Some of you following this along who are deep into project reviews may have thought of this one already. This one actually didn't. This was a customer request that we put this in. It says that as a project manager launching the form, I may not want to start it today. I may want to start it sometime out into the future. It also says I may want to adjust the due dates. So somebody said to us, yeah, that's great. It's great functionality, but our project managers are going to want to say, well, the project's ending in 6 weeks. You know, I'm going on vacation. It's summertime. I want to make sure these things get launched. So let them go in and sort of pre-launch them with a launch date out in the future. And so what you would do if that was the case is you'd come and adjust this launch date. If you wanted to adjust the due date, you could come in and say, well, even though I'm launching it on a specific date, maybe I want to give more time for the project team members to provide feedback. So I'll go to 5 days there. I'll go up to 10 days here. I'll go to 15 days here, and I want this thing done in 20 days. So just by typing in the number of days, what it does is it automatically calculates the due date based on that launch date. You don't have to turn that on. You don't have to give your project managers and employees the capability to change those due dates, but if you want to, it's built in. So what happens is we click next and we get a summary. The summary tells us who's assigned the person as the rater, you know, what the due dates are. It tells us the employee is May, and that if this all looks correct, we're ready to finish and launch this review. So when we click finish and launch, just as you'd expect, this form has been launched. Now, I want to navigate back to the home page, and I want to talk about this for a second. Let's look at this first from the project team member's perspective. Because remember, if I've added members of the project team as 360 reviewers, they will have received an email asking them to come in and provide feedback. And so, you know, they would get the email and that's why I assigned myself so you could see it here. This customer implementation that I just launched, I assigned myself as a 360 evaluator as a project team member. So I know it's about May, it's on my homepage, I have to provide feedback. I'll go ahead and click on this. And when I click on this, what it's going to do is open up the project team member feedback area. And what we've asked the project team member to do in this one, the various project team members, is that when they're evaluating a co-member, we want to hear about 3 important competencies. And I can tell you in our organization, we focus on these as professional services is a big part of it. We actually have 5, but 3 of our most important ones when we talk about projects are accountability, communication, and teamwork. And so we always want to know when we're thinking about how teams work internally, how everybody's doing with respect to accountability, communication, and teamwork. So in this example, I thought, well, why not show those? We've spent some time on these. This project team member comes in, and what they're going to do is click this accountability button, and they're going to be asked to provide feedback. The first thing they're going to do before they look at the feedback they're going to provide, they can read the description of what accountability means. And so we said, you know, hey, this is important in project life. It's somebody meeting deadlines without being required to do it, delivering on time, you know, not requiring micromanagement, making good calls for decision making, you know, setting their time and workload priority well, handling criticism well, taking responsibility for their own learning and development, seeing their own leadership role as part of the teams, you know, willing to share success and or failure, and can be counted on by others to provide timely responses. And of course, if they do all that, the last one, they are going to be able to carry their weight as a project member, as a project team member. You know, one of the things we point out about mPerform is that we ship our product with competency libraries that have great descriptions like this built into it. So again, this sort of stuff has helped to get started. So what do we want to know from the project team members? Well, we thought we'd be a little bit creative here. So we're saying to them, you know what, as it relates to May in this case, let's complete this sentence. This project team member should continue doing this, they should stop doing this, and they should start doing this part. And, you know, many years ago in our mPerform business, we had somebody named Mark Efron who wrote a book on called One-Page Talent Management, and Mark did a webinar for us. One of the things in one-page talent management that we all took away from was that a great way to solicit 360 responses is this idea of asking, what should the employee continue to do, stop doing, and start doing? And the reason for that is that it resonates really well with the employee receiving the feedback. So as a project team member, I would go ahead and fill this in, and I'd give my comments again, just like we do going through these various forms. As I click next, I'll come up with the next competency to be rated, and then I'll fill out the last one, and when I'm done, I'll simply click Submit Review. What does that look like? Well, here's where it gets really interesting and the pieces start to come together even more. I was and am the project manager for the Acme implementation. And we ended that project, let's say, last week. So Burton Best is an employee who is involved in that project. I have assigned 3 project team members to provide feedback. And right away, I know how many people have provided feedback to me as the project manager. 2 out of 3 have provided feedback. Burton has gone in and completed his review. He sent it over to me. I got an email asking me to go in and provide feedback to Burton. But before I provide feedback to Burton, I really want to understand what the project team members said. So if I click on that 2 out of 3, it's going to open up a report that shows me, hey, here's the various project team members. Out of the 3 people that were put in here, here's the feedback they provided. And in accountability, I can see the continue part of being accountable and meeting its deadlines has gone well. The stop doing stuff is what interests me about what they said. So somebody said sitting silent when he sees issues of scope and related timing. Somebody else said he needs to understand the client comes first, not the team schedule. Okay, so it seems like there's some timing issues there. Start communicating impact of scope. Start talking about how change orders and helping with change orders and SOWs. So I would read through these and I would be able to see what those project team members have said about the individual. So I've got my own ideas, of course, because I'm the project manager. I worked with this team. So it's interesting to get this perspective. So I'm going to say, okay, let me go ahead and open up the actual review form. So I'll click on the review form now. And when I open up this review form, this one we went a little simpler with. We just put 3 sections in it: project feedback, project competencies, and final competencies. I sort of have in the back of my head what those project team members or 360 evaluators said. If I forget, I can view the feedback right from within the form as well. If I want to nominate more members of the project team, I can click this button and nominate more people. But let's fill this out. So there's a project feedback section. So I'm going to click here to open up the project feedback section. It's asking me for some questions. Here's a different question style we might use. Did the project help improve the skill set of the employee? Did the team work well together? Did the employee have the tools to enable success? Do you think the project timelines made sense? How satisfied are you with the project? Were there any conflicts? And what would happen is you just go in here and answer those. Now, the employee has gone ahead and answered all these questions, and I can see right away, Burton's neutral on working well together and neutral on the project timelines. It sort of plays into what the 360 evaluator said as well. So I could go ahead and give my own answers on that, and I would say, hey, let's complete that and close that out. In terms of competencies, we come back to competencies, and these competencies are the same ones we asked those project team members to evaluate, the important ones on accountability, communication, and teamwork. I can see right away that when Burton went through and completed this project review, he's rated himself as meeting expectations in all areas. So I would go ahead and provide my own assessment in here. And, again, I can go back and read the definition of accountability. I can see what Burton put in his comments. He's met all deliverables on time. He felt other team members left us hanging at times. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. And I would be able to provide my rating and comments. And then, a final comments area, as we scroll down, I'd go ahead and read through that. And I can see here that, some employee feedback. Scope wasn't managed well. We're so eager to please the client. We didn't convey the impact. Things we can improve. I saw a lot of scope change happening. I didn't feel confident enough to bring it up in team meetings. I need to be more vocal. Issues mentioned above, but also an important one. At the end of the day, we delivered a very good solution for the client. So it was really, something that gives me a lot of foundation for feedback, and I would go ahead and do that. And when I'm done doing that, I'm simply going to submit it for review. So this is another way just to understand another project form. Now, the third type of project form that we do and one that, you know, is more involved would be one related to a major project. So let's say that we have gone through, we've got somebody who's in a project that lasts years and years and years. And we want to be able to look at the feedback and provide feedback to them as they go through the project. So let's take a look at Ashley's here under the project EMP. Now, this form that we're opening up is a form that has more to it. You can see right away that there's more steps at the top of the screen. You know, there are from kickoff to monitoring progress to team assessments. There's a project manager review where I am now, project review meeting, direct manager review, and then the review becomes complete. This type of form would be used for somebody who lives in a project for the entire year or beyond. And so, again, we'd come in and we'd fill out details about, you know, the project name and their role in it. We'll navigate over and talk about the milestone schedule. So what milestones are active that they're involved in. And we'll go through here, and we've got change requests, we've got the client kickoff, we've got project the schedule that's completed, and this gives them an opportunity really to document the different milestones and, of course, make any progress notes as we go through this process. We've got a performance factors area where, of course, we'll list out all those important competencies that are part of the project, just like the ones we've seen on the other forms. So these are really an opportunity and a great way to, you know, again, both set the expectation and give us a measurement of what we want to respond to when we meet again in the future. So this form sort of designed so that when we initiate a project, everybody sees how they're going to be evaluated. The other two forms we looked at are project forms that kick off at the end. This one's slightly different because it allows the project team member to understand the structure of how they'll be evaluated. We talk about it as a best practice when we talk about 360 and we talk about performance management, and really allowing everybody to understand how they'll be assessed before the assessment period starts. This form also incorporates the idea of one-on-one check-ins. And, you know, the one-on-one check-in aspect could be extremely important in a long-term project. Again, something we talk a lot about when we talk about annual performance reviews. Nowadays, it's everywhere. Ad hoc check-ins, one-on-one check-ins, the importance of regular, frequent, continuous feedback. And in our world, in mPerform, this is really easy because we allow forms to stay live during the year. We allow forms to stay live during the project. The employee can come in and update. They can provide progress updates. We can document the one-on-one meetings just like we've done in this example. It also allows us to bring in something else we talk a lot about in our mPerform world, which is tag and continuous feedback. In mPerform, employees can give other employees instant feedback. And I just want to show you that for a second, and I want to come back to this because it's an extremely important part of our package that's here. So when we talk about tag and we talk about continuous feedback in mPerform, it has two elements to it. And here's the beauty of this. This can be happening with your project teams. It can be about projects. It can be happening outside project teams. It can be happening as part of your performance management process. And we do a lot of stuff with these in this day and age. You know, if you look at research that's out there, if you look at the big companies that are making big, bold changes to their annual performance review processes, the GEs of the world, the Adobes of the world, the Microsofts of the world, the Deloittes of the world, they all have something in common. Well, they have a couple things in common. Number one, they're trying to shake down the annual performance review. Number two, there is a focus on continuous, frequent feedback. And the third element is they're all very goal-oriented in terms of their planning. So when we talk about this frequent, continuous feedback, for us, that's tag. Tag is two elements. It's a journal. So I can come and add a journal here. It could be a journal about a specific employee. If I'm working with Ashley on a project, I might want to take a journal on Ashley so that I remember during the project something that, you know, I observed her at her best. I saw a great demonstration of achievement. Maybe it's a development opportunity. And maybe I don't have the project review form open yet, because we're using a review form and a process where we only do it at the end of the project. But to document my learnings, my observations, I come in here and I just journal quickly. You know, this applies, as I said, both within the project management framework as well as within an annual performance review framework. The second element of this continuous feedback loop, if you want to use it, would be that you send the feedback to that person. And that means you're actually using what we call the tag. And when I select send a tag, I would provide the feedback in this area. I might give a star rating that's here, and I can say I want to submit that to the employee. And when I click send, this employee, in this case Ashley, gets an email that says, Ashley, you've been tagged in mPerform. Click here to read the feedback. And when she clicks on that link, it's going to show her her tag wall. She's going to see all the feedback she's received during the year. She's going to see any journals that she's taken on other people or on herself. And as she scrolls down, you'll see a great list of different feedback that's available. So the idea of this is that anybody can provide feedback to anybody at any point during the year, at any point during a project, across different projects. There's no rules around it. It's almost like you're sending an email to someone, but we do it in mPerform because we want to use this as evidence and as support for the feedback we're giving. And so that leads us right back to that form we were in. And I wanted to explain that whole tag piece so that you understand what is happening with it. So when I go back to, you know, Ashley's project review form, and I go into the one-on-one check-in area, what we've done here, we've enabled a link so that the project manager can come in and click on the link and open up the tags. And this allows the project manager to see the different feedback that Ashley's received. It also allows the project manager to select feedback that they want to use to support the feedback they're giving in the project review. So it could be a journal, like one I took, for instance, that I really enjoyed her presentation. It was informative. I thought the team benefited from it. Her presentation skills are greatly improving. I should have added in there that in the context of this project, communication was extremely important because we felt like we had to say things to the client 8 to 10 times for them to understand what we were saying. We'll put that in there. Another one, you know, she's got some from Kim. I'm not going to use that one right now, but I could go look at the second page and search through these. The point is, when I see those that I want to include, I just click Add Selected. And now, in this specific review, the feedback that came through during the year is a formal part of the record. And it's all about, as we said at the beginning, this best practice of bringing more voices into the process. So it's about thinking of this project review form as something that allows us to reach out to project team members, but also others that were involved and who have feedback. And this applies right within, of course, our regular employee performance reviews in mPerform, but as well as in project reviews. And you can see how we sort of close the gap here between project and ongoing employee performance. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring as many of these pieces together as we can. So in the spirit of that, we'll continue with this and we'll say, now that I've filled that out, what else do I look at in this form? If I navigate over to the summary page, hey, I can see how the ratings for Ashley in this project are coming together. And, you know, for us in mPerform, we got so much flexibility, as I mentioned in this product, that, you know, we do ratings in one of two ways. We generally do it as numbers, but there's a big aversion out there nowadays to just rating with numbers. We can also rate with words. And if we rate with words, it looks like what you see there on milestone schedule and performance factors. You know, it's words that represent the underlying rating, where the total we showed as 3.17. You know, we just do that for demonstration purposes. Typically, we would not show both numbers and words on the page. So that's how we work within that summary page. And, you know, it's a really, again, a great form that could be used and really is almost incorporating projects and annual employee reviews. When we're ready, what happens is we go ahead and click submit. And of course, we'll submit the project review now to the direct manager. So it's gone from Ashley, the project team member, to John, who is the project manager. And now in the loop, we're bringing into play the direct manager. So the direct manager will see how employee Ashley has performed through this project. One of the things that's really useful inside all of our reviews, and one of the other ways we bring it together, it's how the last sort of step I wanted to talk about today. And here's what happens with this one. If I navigate to just a normal employee performance review, so this is like a standard sort of employee performance review in mPerform. Right now, it has nothing to do with projects. It's, you know, how the employee's performing, what their goals are, their competency assessment, their goals for next year. We might ask questions about career planning and about their ability to take on more responsibility and, you know, are they ready for a promotion? Things like this. They all get incorporated into the annual performance review. But let's suppose in my project world, in this example, Ashley reports to me, but I know during the year that Ashley was involved in many projects. And I know during the year that the project managers would have done reviews on Ashley. They would have completed it to give her feedback and talk about her development opportunities. So as her default reporting manager, what does that actually mean to me? How do I see it? And how I see it very simply is I navigate down here to this history area, and if I click on it, look what I see in here. I see Ashley's performance history. And even though I wasn't involved in it, I can actually look at the project close review that was done a few days ago, where the project manager, Burton Best, completed a project review on Ashley, my direct report. I wasn't involved in this process at all. I just know that Ashley had a project close review completed on her. And now I have access to that. And it's really easy for me just to click a button. And as her direct manager, I can go through and, you know, read through this and see how this went in this project, you know, what ratings were provided, what comments were provided. So I get a bit of a sense before I go in on how Ashley did during that project. The same information is available to me if I go to view Ashley's profile. So if I go to her profile, you'll see here her public profile. Well, one of the advantages of our profile capability in mPerform is a full profile view. And in the full profile view, which I lovingly refer to as our manager control center, it shows me all of the reviews in Ashley's history. And, you know, I can go open them there. I can also see additional pieces of information about Ashley. So, you know, it's just a great way to bring all these pieces together. And so that's where we spend our time in mPerform, and that's where we've spent our time with these project reviews, is trying to bring it all together into one house. I think the key walk away from today for anybody in a project-centric organization is that, yes, we have our annual ongoing review, but we have to, in a project-oriented organizations, allow project managers and or employees to launch forms themselves. It should not be an HR administration process to kick out project review forms. It should be a capability available to the project teams and their managers to self-manage. And I think with that, what we'll do is say, let's look at some questions. I know we've had lots of questions come in here, so we'll go ahead and just change gears here and head over to the questions. If you have questions that you haven't submitted, please go ahead and enter them in the Zoom webinar panel, and we're going to do our best to respond with the time remaining. So, first question is, will HR be notified if a project review is outstanding or late? The answer to that question is yes. HR can be notified if a project review is outstanding or late, but we can also notify the project manager, the project team member. So there's lots of alerting capability in mPerform that would keep everyone on track with those project reviews, what's expected of them, and when it's expected. Another question that came up is, can the 360 reviewers give a rating? And the answer to that question is, of course, yes, they can. One thing I want to stress with what we've shown today is that there's lots of flexibility for you to design these feedback forms how you want them to work. So we use the start, stop, continue thing. If you want to use a rating and comments, go ahead and do that. You absolutely can. You've got full design capability here in mPerform. Another question, what if we have multiple project managers on a project? That is a very good question. So if we have multiple project managers on a project, what happens is those other project managers become 360 evaluators. So you can actually go in and assign anybody in the organization to provide feedback, and project managers can be, again, among that group that's asked to provide feedback. Another question, can employees paste journal notes into reviews? Yes, employees can paste journal notes into reviews, and they have the capability to do that. Of course, we would want them to do that as well. Another question, can the company's leadership team assign project goals? So the answer to that question is yes, the leadership team can assign project goals. The capability in here to have content pre-assigned, just like we pre-assigned the competencies, for instance, in the project review form, project goals could be pre-assigned. And it brings up an important point that in some of these project review forms, we may want leadership and or the project manager to go in at the start and establish what those project goals are. And that's something that, of course, can be done. And another question that came up, can you search feedback for project names? And of course, the answer to that is yes. You can search, there's a search capability through the tag application for you to provide, to search and provide, look for feedback by project. So all of that is 100% available, and it becomes part of potentially that review. And it looks like another question just came in. Is there an employee sign-off? And the answer to that question is yes. There is employee sign-off capability. There's project manager sign-off capability. There's sign-off capability throughout all the forms in mPerform. So you can ensure that, that your folks got through the process correctly. And our sign-off capability asks, okay, what questions? It asks questions when you sign off. It might say, do you understand the contents of this form? Have you had a chance to sit down and review it with the project manager? And the answer to that question is those sign-off questions are there, and of course you can include those as part of your process. So, if any of this appeals to you, if you think there's a need to bring this into play in your organization, certainly reach out to us. We want to hear from you. We'd be happy to take you through a deeper demo and talk about your organization-specific requirements. You can reach us at info@employeeperformance.com. We've got our phone number up there as well. And of course, you can check out our website, employee-performance.com, and project reviews. We've got lots of samples to help you get started. You can go as simple or as sophisticated as you want. And of course, as I mentioned, mPerform's got lots of great bells and whistles to really help you bring together project reviews and employee performance review. Thanks very much for your time today. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to speaking with you in the future. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John, for providing this information to us today. The archived webcast will be available on the HR.com site within 24 hours, located under the archived webcast listing. Please take a moment to fill out the exit survey that opened in a new browser page on your computer, or click on the link to the survey in the chat area of your webcast controls. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.